Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robin Ayub. I'm the founder of the Localization Fireside Chat podcast and YouTube channel. And for those who don't know me, you can find me on LinkedIn, get to know me a little bit. I'd love to get to know you. And this podcast, this initiative that I started 45 days ago has taken off quite fast, I would say. And today I was just checking some analytics on our video performance on YouTube, and found out that we are 25,000 views already, and we're averaging about 1,500 views for a localization industry. That's pretty significant, and I'm very happy with the performance. Again, we're at early stages of the launch of our channel, and I'm happy to report that we're doing very well, thanks in most part for the guests that we have on this channel, for the thought leaders that we bring on this channel to share their experience, to share their know-how, and to tell us their challenges, their innovations, what they're thinking about for the future. And hopefully the learnings and the lessons that we're sharing here with you today will impress somebody, or will, for some other people to perhaps act differently or learn from them, or take the lessons from those and apply them in their businesses, apply them in their lives, etc. So today I do have the honor and great honor to be joined by Cecilia Maldonado. And Cecilia is well known, and everybody knows Cecilia Maldonado. She's from Latam Way. She works for Latam Way. She's a co-partner there, and she's in charge of revenue generation for the company. So, and I want to thank Cecilia for joining me today. I really thank you for your time, Cecilia, with me, and the guests and the audience here will appreciate what we have to chat about today. Again, it's a fireside chat. I was just telling Cecilia earlier before we started recording, no sense of stressing over this one. I'm sure throughout the discussion, some learnings will come out, and the audience will take that learning and apply it in their businesses as well. So, Cecilia, the floor is yours. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and where did you start, and where are you now?
Okay, thank you, Robin, for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here with you, and congratulations on the success of your channel. That says a lot. Of course, it has to do with engagement and the topics and the content. I hope I can provide something interesting for your audience here today. Well, where do I start? I am Cecilia Maldonado, as you said. I've been in this industry for more than 20 years. So yes, we're getting old. I started out as a translator, because that's what I studied at university, at the National University of Cordoba in Argentina. And when I graduated, there was no industry locally. So there weren't that many opportunities for us to, grow as a professional. So we had to do other things in the meantime to make some money. So we did some teaching, and many of the people that graduated with me ended up being teachers of English instead of translators. So I was determined, because at first I wanted to be an interpreter for the UN. And when I found out about the requirements, I'm like, oh, I don't think so. I did do a lot of work as an interpreter, but I had the worst time. I had to prepare a lot. You were saying, don't stress over this. I stress over everything, even traveling. Every time I do something, I stress. So for me, an interpreting job was not my ideal as a day-to-day thing. I enjoyed it. I was good at it, but I wasn't enjoying it. So I started researching things that we could do and how we could grow in this profession. And that's when we found at the time, I had two partners, and we found the ATA conference. And our first ATA conference was in the year 2020 in Orlando. And we were so surprised to see all the opportunities, the technology. People would stop us in the hallways and ask if we wanted to translate for them. And we were like, whoa. So that's when we decided to bring that information back to Argentina, organized a conference that was very informal and very, hands-on, but a huge success. obviously there was a huge interest. And that was when the Translation and Interpretation Conference was born. So I was listening to a few podcasts, and I always listen to podcasts. And when I hear people say that there was never something in Argentina or in Latin America, well, I have news for you. We organized these conferences 20 years ago. So, and we have always invited the entire region. And of course, the region is weird. Argentina has a lot of participation in the industry, more than other countries. That doesn't mean that they don't exist, but it is true that Argentina is a huge hub for translation. So that was my path. I started out as a translator, built my own company, started doing translation, then editing, and moved and wore different hats along the years until I was named, or one of our, it's always been, because we're translators and we don't have a business background, we always hired, and I always say we because I always had partners. We always work with consultants to help us build a business and have a healthy business. So one of the consultants at the time, when we were trying to identify what every person was good at within the company, that person said, "You're obviously sales, you're right." So and he was like, well, okay, I'm sales. And I do enjoy it. So that's how I moved into doing sales, and this is why what I enjoy, connecting with people and, you know, generating these relationships that are my drive, daily drive. So.
Thanks a lot for sharing this. And we have some similarities, you and I. I started my career as a computer programmer, and
okay.
I didn't know computer programming can be so boring for an extrovert versus an introvert person. So, and I remember I had various jobs in technology, but the last job I had as a technologist, I was a system engineer for a telecom company. And I was, my job was to design networks and put things together, I guess, for customers. I wasn't involved with customers directly, but I was the person who builds, the solutions for the customers. And I remember, having this gentleman come to my cubicle and kneeling on one knee, sitting beside me on my desk there. And he says to me, "Your name is Robin, right?" I said, "Yes." And I don't know who that individual is. I didn't know. I mean, large organization, I don't know everybody. And back in the days, there was no internet as much as we have right now. We've got a flood of information. Now we know everything about everybody. So I didn't know who that individual was. He turned out later to be the CEO of the company. And he's telling me that today, your job is to become the sales manager. I said, "Excuse me?" I said, "What do you mean by that? I'm an engineer, I'm a your system engineer. I don't do sales." He said, "Nope, you're doing the presentation for the client today because the sales manager's out sick and you're taking his job." So I said,
wow.
"Who are you again?" He tells me his name. He's the CEO of the company. So I said, "Oh, okay. So now what?" He said, "Okay, so what do we want me to do? Like, what's my job?" He said, "Okay, we're going to do the presentation. You got to go to the customer and you got to close the deal. That's your job." And I'm thinking, like, closing the deal? Like, that's not training. Long story short, I do the presentation. I win the client. I sign the contract right in the same presentation. And I remember saying to the customer after I feel like they're nodding, I said, "Who signs the contract?" That's the key, I think, that my CEO, who was in the meeting, he grabbed onto that and he said, "Okay, from here on, you're a salesperson because you asked for the contract."
Exactly. But the thing is, what do you think made a difference at that time? So you knew what you were talking about, right?
Yeah, it's the subject matter, right? So, and especially when you're presenting a complex matter, and as a from a solution perspective, you're able to speak about it in a much more detailed and convincing ways versus superficially from a sales perspective, 100,000 foot level, which customers generally don't connect with that. all you're saying to the customer, this is how it impacts your daily life. That's how your business is going to be impacted by this. Today you're doing this, tomorrow you're going to be doing something different because of my solution. So that connects with people, because then you brought the solution down to an actionable item that the customer can figure out where your solution fit in my business. This is where sometimes, and we're diving into the conversation, I guess, right now. This is where sometimes I feel like some of the sales initiatives or the sales pitches that I've heard before is that we stay too high level and we don't engage down the level of customer understanding. What are we selling? A lot of times I'm a sales guy and I love hearing other people selling to me. And a lot of times people call me up to sell me stuff and I listen because I want to listen. I want to help. By the end of that pitch, I don't know what was this about? Like, what are you pitching? What is your product?
Well, exactly. We were saying that our industry is not really, there are not that many trainings on sales and stuff, but because most of the companies were built by people who started doing the translations, the bulk, right? We're not talking about the big players, but, yes, I'm a translator. I did what we sell. So I sort of understand what we're doing, right? And I know how I can help you. Right. So that is mainly the key, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Especially like in a lot of times, like especially now in the localization world that I'm in, and I've been in the industry as much as you have. I started in 2002, around that time. And I tell you, like a lot of times when I go in as a salesperson to convince somebody to do business with me, I normally, like, you could do it on your own, fine, but in the industry that we're in, it's all about trusting. The customer wants to trust. And that trust is very gray area, right? So it's not easily obtained. It's not you can go on somewhere and say, hey, trust me. It doesn't work that way. It develops over time. It takes a lot more evidence. It takes a lot more convincing to develop that trust, right? So to develop that trust, which you are in a very good position, you come from that background. I was a translator. I translate. I've studied it. I've delivered those products. So you must be in a better position to convince the customer that, yes, we can do what we said we're going to do.
I guess that's the key to what we do. Yeah,
that's right.
Basically.
So right.
And I was thinking you said you started in 2002.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And I said 2020, I think. Well, whatever. Yeah.
You said over 20 years. That's okay. No big deal.
Over 20 years. Not 2020. There's a part of my life I want to delete because I don't want to accept that I'm getting old.
You and me both. You and me both. I think we're going through a phase right now where everybody is the same way.
Where did the years go?
I don't know if you feel like I do, because when you work from home, I'm assuming. You work remotely, or do you work from an office?
Well, twice a week from the office these days, but the rest of the time from home.
So during COVID, everybody working from home, including me, I find the time goes by so fast. I don't know if it's everybody is the same. I just feel like in the morning, I start working, early in the morning, and just before I know it, it's already 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. Yeah. You just don't know where the time goes.
It's, I don't know either, but now I think it's become worse after the pandemic because we went back to normal with the habits of the pandemic. So it's like we're trying to work that many hours, and where do we fit the exercise, the socializing, the daily tasks? I mean, the day is just too short. So that's right. That's what is happening in my experience.
Switching topic a little bit, can you tell me a little bit about Latin ways, if you don't mind? Let's go back to the initial conversation.
Okay.
I love talking to you, and it's always interesting conversation. But let's talk about Latin ways a little bit. Tell me a little bit about the company, how many employees, where you are, what kind of services do you offer?
So Latin Ways is a regional language vendor. So we focus on the Latin American market, and we offer translation and communication and different language related services. And we have done so for 20 years. So Latin Ways is the result of a merger of two local companies. So overall, I started my first company 20 years ago. Then we split. Then I started my own company, and then I had a partner, and then we merged 5 years ago with another local company and became LatAmWays. Today, LatAmWays is a women-owned certified company, ISO certified company, and according to the last Newsy report, ranked 8th in the region. So we've been here for a long time. There's about 40 people in the company, and mainly project managers and vendor management. So we have, after the pandemic, the structure changed a little bit because it was the first time ever that we needed to incorporate human resources in our company. So it was a combination of the pandemic that exacerbated the need for talent anywhere in the world. So we had to do human resources activities to retain our talent and to address the hunters from overseas and the awesome salaries that they were offering our project managers, and sort of, you know, doing things for them and having people 100% dedicated to listening to them and what they needed, and if they were comfortable, what they wanted, and all of those things that you need to do. So it's management. We have a talents department. We have in-house linguists and quality control, project managers, and business development department, and a finance department. So basically, the structure that any language services company has. Yes. So yeah, that's
who's your market? Like, what is your market? What do you consider your market?
Mainly the US. And I saw some of the people think that we work in Latin America. We focus on the Latin American market for people who want to come and talk to the Latin American audience, because we're here and that's what we know. But we don't necessarily target clients in Latin America, even though there's language diversity here, not that much. It's not a huge need as it is in the US or in Europe. And the US is easier for us because of the time alignment, so time zone and communication. And it's easier for us to go back and forth and travel and meet with our clients, go to events. It has always been more of a, you know, easier target. And in terms of what kind of clients, we have a mix of end clients and MLVs. You know that for smaller regional language vendors or single language vendors, it's always been easier to work with the MLVs than it has been to, you know, find end clients. I have seen a trend, and it's changing. In fact, we just won an RFP with an end client out of the US, Silicon Valley area, because they wanted to have more control over quality and cost. So, and this is something that they are trying out. So
I do, you know, funny you mentioned like the MLV being your customer, because when I first saw that model, I would have thought, you know, this reminds me quite a bit of a pyramid way of marketing things, you know, and you know, a lot of times, you know, that's how pyramid marketing works. You know, there's many levels in the selling process until the product is shipped, and you know. Of course, you know, with 19,000 localization companies around the world, it's very hard sometimes for a client to decipher, you know, who do I do business with? Which one is good? Which one is not good? And how many of them do I have to try before I find something that I like, or I consistent, etc. So you do business with MLVs, and that's a great idea. But I'm assuming from a client perspective, and from your perspective, going direct to a customer, that's, you know, make the road a little shorter.
It is, you know, having the MLV is a steady revenue generator, right? So it's like an everyday thing. The relationship is already built, is already there, and for us, is a daily, you know, a workflow. So it's easy. While we work towards getting or getting into the end client relationship, which takes longer. I have friends in the corporate side. I have friends I've been friends with forever. So I can't sit down and ask, what is it? I mean, why do you go to the big guys and you can't come to me for Spanish or Portuguese for that matter? And these relationships that these corporations have been there forever. They just need one single point of contact. It's easier for them. They don't necessarily have the structure to deal with multiple vendors for all the languages that they need. So, you know, it's a strategy thing for them, and there's not much we can do about that, because if I had to become a multilingual language vendor, then I would become not an expert at what I do. Spanish is already big enough. If you think about Spanish and the number of people that speak Spanish and the volumes, it would make sense to just have one vendor for Spanish and maybe another vendor for the rest of the languages, right? So that's sort of the approach that we're taking. So given the importance and the size, then, you know, come to the expert.
You bring up a very good point, though, Cecilia. Like one is, which is I always encourage, is direct communication. You know, happen to be your friends in this case, but direct communication with customers sometimes to clear up many things, understand their needs, tell your story, you know, clarify a few things, what's important to them, and figure out what makes a successful arrangement with this particular customer down the road, kind of thing. So allows you to build a solution that the customer envisioned at that point. So from your perspective, and from without giving the secret sauce, etc., I don't want to, you know, we don't want you to spill the beans here of what works for you. What is your go-to, if you can share like some high level ideas, what is your go-to-market strategy for Latin ways? I know your market, as you mentioned earlier, is the US, but I'm assuming it's not limited to the US. What is your go-to-market strategy? Do you have a sales team? You have a marketing? I know you attend a lot of conferences. I see your face on pictures on LinkedIn quite often, so that's very good, and that's make you active in the industry. So,
well, for me, it's maybe mainly networking. So attending all these events, because as we said before, it's all about the relationships, right? So we are in an industry where we've seen it. I mean, it's once you have a relationship with somebody, then that person, if they have the opportunity, and I have these friends in the Silicon Valley area, they're like, I am trying to think how I can, you know, give you something, just because they want to get out of their way to help. And I'm like, it's okay. I'm not, you know, this is not what it is about. So our strategy has always been understanding our market. So first of all, understanding who we are and what we can do. Understanding how we can be different from our competitors. You know that Argentina, ever since I started, it has become a huge hub of translation companies. So every time you go to a conference, there's like 25 translation companies from Argentina. We're all offering the same, right? So it's difficult to compete if it's not only based on price. So for me, the relationship surpasses that pricing strategy, right? Because the reality is that we're all working with the same vendors, the same, you know, clients. Many of us.
Plus, you are in the same economy. You are in the same region. You know, you pay the same salaries. Yeah.
Exactly. So I have people that I know coming after my PMs to sell them to, you know, companies in the US. So so understanding who you are, and so for us, the strategy is always analyzing what we do, always questioning how we can be better. Every year we do consultancy. Every year we sort of shuffle and think our business model. I think that before you could think of a business model and have it for 10 years, I don't think you can have a business model for more than 6 months now because of how fast things are changing.
That's right.
So we sit down, we re-strategize, we look at we have KPIs, of course, that we look at. We usually look at them weekly. We have corporate company-wide goals, and then every department has their own goals that have to, work towards those company-wide goals. We look at them every week. And then every quarter, we break it down in the case of business development to understand client behavior, purchases. And then, of course, with that information, we can make strategic decisions, think what's going to come next, if we need a meeting, if we need a visit. So if I have to name one thing what drives business development at Latam Ways is the relationships. It's the relationship with the people. And every time we have an opportunity to have a conversation with one of our clients or have a prospect, I always say that I'm here for the long term. And that's why I've been here for 20 years. I do have a portal for transactional business. So we do have that also. But Latam Ways is a service business, and we sell a service. I mean, translation, everybody sells translation. Sure. We sell service. So if we can be your strategic partner, if we can be who you can trust, but that is a two-way street. So it's communication. It's always the best clients at Latam Ways are clients that are in constant communication with us. They give us heads up. They give us training. They want us to participate in their RFPs. Mm-hmm. So we work together. This is win-win. Right. If I'm doing all of your Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese and some other languages, why not involve me from the start? I'm your office without being part of your company, right?
That's right. That's right.
So that's what I would summarize it in just one action. It's relationships.
Yeah, congratulations on the focus on the communication and building relationship, because that is, in a service industry, that's absolutely paramount. That's absolutely important. And I always say, the gap between a business or service provider and their customer generally is filled by the competitor. Generally, if they're not talking to you, they're talking to somebody else. You'd want them to talk to you. You'd want them to be involved with you, and you want them to make sure that if they have something on their mind, they feel that they can trust you enough to say, "Yeah, let's have a conversation about what I have in mind."
Exactly.
So now that we've let's assume we've done the sales job and revenue started to flow. Every service company, including the localization industry, deals with I want to call it sales operation issues internally. That's not a secret. I hope I'm not spilling the beans on anybody here, but it is fact, where, you've got, sales is about market changes. It's about, selling something that the customer have asked for that we need to customize sometimes, where operation have set ways of doing things. And every time there's a new customer, perhaps it changes the way, small amount, changes the way things are done internally. And there's always that friction between sales and operations. I wanted to inquire a little bit on this one, because everybody I talk to, they tell me, it is there. But, it's sort of like the elephant in the room that nobody talks about. So what's your perspective on this?
Sometimes it's funny. I should call Mile here, one of my partners and the person in charge of operations, because sometimes it's like, hey, we are in the same side of the street.
That's right. We're on the same team.
Exactly. What are we doing? We're not competing against each other. We are always thinking of new ways of addressing these issues, but these issues exist in every company. Even my clients, when I talk to them, sometimes like, oh my God, my salesperson wants to quit because the PMs didn't quote blah, 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 right. And I'm like, we need to work together. I mean, again, salespeople, usually the salespeople in the bigger, or most of my clients, don't really know or necessarily know translation. So they just do all the sales, and then they expect the rest of the company to do everything else. With companies like Latam Ways, where we know what we're doing, it's mainly we work together. There's more cross collaboration, right?
Okay.
So the alignment there happens with showing everyone in the team that everybody's working at the same level. Mile sometimes says, "No, we can't do that," and I'm like, "Yes, we can." So that's the kind of friction that happens between operations and sales. Sometimes sales says yes to many things, and operations says, "No, we can't." It's more related to protecting, the vendors and the PMs and their time, and sales wanting to be more aggressive. But the reality is that every company is measured by how much money they make.
That's right.
So
That's right.
When we have this conversation, I'm like, yeah, but if you look at our goals, because this is the kind of conversation that we have, if you look at our goals, half of the dashboard is sales.
That's right.
So allow me to do my job. Okay. Right. Let's work together, or these numbers are going to be stagnant. Okay.
That's right.
So yes, encouraging regular and open communication with the team is, and across all the departments, is crucial. We have bi-weekly meetings with what we call account management meetings. So it's operations and the business development department. There's trainings always. And we had, and this is something that I'll share just because it might help. Because we had more experience with MLVs, when we started working with end clients, at the beginning, it took us a little while to understand that we couldn't deal with the end client the same way we were dealing with MLB. And it took a little while to understand that there had to be a different kind of communication, different timing, a different level of expertise from the team handling the end client.
That's right.
So it's also you being involved, to me, from business development, being involved in the conversation and seeing where they are not connecting and teaching them, dedicating the time to say, hey, listen, see, when this client, and it's a permanent training, right? So it's showing them emails, it's showing them communications, it's having them in the calls so that they see what kind of communication we have with an end client versus an MLV. The MLV is like, here's the job, do it for
That's
tomorrow.
Right.
The end client is meetings, here's the reference materials, onboarding, blah, blah, blah. So much more complex that it takes a lot of working together to be on the same page. Of course, the same goals. If you show your goals to your entire team, so as I said, we have the organization-wide goals, and then we have the goals per department that will help those goals be achieved. Right. So when you make that public and available to everyone in the team, everybody's aligned in a way. Everybody knows how much money we need to make. Everybody knows how much money we're spending on blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So it's not about, it's about, if we want people to work as hard as you do, they need to see you work hard. So we are the lead by example kind of theory.
That's right.
So we work as hard as our employees, and we share information. We cannot not share information. Being scared that they're going to steal the information and take it somewhere else, well,
c'est la vie.
C'est la vie. Exactly. So defining those shared goals and metrics, and of course, trying to have all the technology that you need in place in order for everybody to see this quickly and efficiently.
Timely.
So our CRM in the business development department, our TMS that anybody can, access, mainly vendor management to deal with the vendor side of it, project managers to see availability and rates that we business development oversee and maintain, The information about all the clients is maintained by business development. Any news is added there. We have like, red flags if there's something that needs to be communicated, making it as automated and as simple as possible for everybody to be on the same page. So basically, that's how we work on alignment across the different departments. And I want to add something there with a remote thing. I've seen many companies, especially in this side of the world, that have gone completely remote, or they have always been remote. And when the pandemic started, of course, we had to go remote. And then when the pandemic ended, we said, let's go back to the office. Nobody wants to go back to the office every day. And I understand it's time. It's a combination of housework, especially in our industry. There's a lot of women with kids. And it's great to be at home and have your kid right there. I understand that. But when I was trying to understand what was it about working from home or working remotely, aside from the saving time and money, it was about productivity. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I understand productivity because we work all day. Even though we have our kids in the same room, we're working all day. We never stop. But there has to be something else outside of productivity. And I came across this presentation podcast, I don't remember what it was, that actually made sense. So when you go back to, because I was trying to find excuses to go back to the office, and this person said, we are human beings and we're wired for relationships. And it's okay to have huge productivity. But the problem that the pandemic or the remote work brought to our existence is there's no creativity. So we stopped being creative and innovative because we stopped having conversations. When you're in the same office,
we're siloed now.
Exactly. When you're in the same office, working with finance people, business development, linguists, and everybody in the company with different roles, you go out for a smoke, you go out for lunch, you take a break. And that simple conversation about whatever,
that's right,
or you overhear a conversation, sparks something in your head that makes you think of a new solution, of a new idea, of a new approach that you wouldn't have had if you had been in your office all day, every day.
Absolutely.
So we decided, as a strategy, as a company strategy, we go back to the office twice a week. And we are hoping to make it more often, but we're negotiating. Twice a week is as much as we could get right now.
So I'm assuming all your staff lives around the office. Is that what I?
Not around the office, but in the same city. Yeah.
In the same city.
Yes.
They can commute to the office. That's my point.
They can commute. Yes. We only have, I think, 2 people that live in different provinces, and some of the linguists, the in-house linguists, that have moved out of this city, and they still work remote, but they're linguists in the end. It's different than the talent people, the ops people. Yeah. People that need to be more
talking
creative.
to a few people about this issue of remote working, of course, your point is very valid, and I've heard the same theory before. Creativity is lacking when you don't work with others. That interconnectivity with others sparks a bunch of other creativity, ideas, solutions, etc. However, I'm hearing also from a business perspective that the remote working model, if you will, and it opened up a whole bunch of scenarios where, let's say, business A requires talent, it's not found at the right characteristics or the right criteria within the area that they are. Remote working now allows them to hire that individual anywhere in the planet, if they
anywhere.
Want.
And I agree with that. But everybody's coming to Argentina right now, so I have them all here.
I think they're going to Argentina. Must be a nice place. I never visited. Maybe I should.
Oh my God, you should. There's a conference
which city? Which city are you in? Cordoba? Are you in Cordoba?
Cordoba. Yeah. Translated in Argentina, the organization, the non-for-profit that I co-founded many years ago, is having their 3rd event in September. So
And
maybe you
what
should think
date in
about it.
September?
I think it's the 1 to 3.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll find out.
Yeah, I'll confirm that. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I
Translated in
appreciate it.
Argentina. It's a nice event.
It's one of the association that you're heavily involved in.
Well, I co-founded it. So
That's right.
yes, my business partner Agustina was the president for 2 years. And yes, my event, the Translation and Interpretation Conference,
Hmm.
when I split from my former partner, we stopped doing that conference. So when I got involved again and Agus assumed as president, I said, why don't we, resurface the Translation and Interpretation Conference? I help you organize it.
Yep.
And I helped her put together the 2 first conferences. I'm not involved in this one, but because I have too many things on my plate. But they already have, all the background information, all the previous, materials to sort of work with. So yeah.
I wanted to ask
I
this
like that
question.
organization.
I wanted to ask you this question a little earlier, but I left it till now. I guess it's very interesting to catch up with you on many topics, and I hope you come back to this channel because I'd like to dig deeper into some of the conversation that we're having right now. And there are some topics that really you can dedicate an hour just exploring.
I know.
Everybody is talking now about the technology innovation that's happening in our industry. On many front, really.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that? Where do you
Oh my
see
God.
the technology and how are you operating within all this today and what's your plan in the future, I guess?
We are standing by and seeing how it goes. I
That's right.
mean, it's because of the nature of our clientele, I would say, we sort of do what they want. So we can't really say we're going to use machine translation or integrate artificial intelligence in this and that, and then do post editing. We did many years ago, maybe 2-3 years ago, we created a program on our proprietary training platform for post editors because we were post editing. I mean, the experience showed that the editors were not necessarily good post editors. So we said, okay, these are different skills. We need to train people. So we created this training program, and every person that post edits at Latin Ways has approved that program. Maybe they're great linguists, but they are not necessarily great post editors. So that's one of the things that we did to sort of tap into this new post-editing thing. In terms of using machine translation, most of the projects that are machine translation come to us already machine translated. So there's not much we do there. And where we wanted to investigate a little bit, like we're always trying to find new verticals, niche where we could help. The technology places where we've been to, artificial intelligence is like 100% on, and they cannot see where we would fit in. so I'm like, okay, I'm obviously not talking to the right people because these are salespeople probably, so they don't really know how we can help. But I was listening to another podcast, and when I heard what he was saying about how they offer value or added value to their service, I'm like, yes, you can do that because you're this big of a company. Like measuring. So on top of the translation of the website, they're offering how the translation impacts on return on investment. So that's an additional, that's a different world.
That's right.
So as a regional language vendor, how much, and everybody that comes to Latin America to do translation, they come to Latin America thinking everything is cheaper here, just with that mindset. So one of the things cheaper? That,
or do they have the wrong impression? I don't know.
They have the wrong impression. And this is, one of the things you wanted to discuss was pricing strategies. And I'm like, We have nothing to do with pricing strategies. I mean, the client, when they come here, they're like, okay, this is my budget, or this is how much I want to pay. Or, oh my God, I have 3 other vendors that offer me half your price. So that's why, for me, it's important. Relationships for me are important. And that's
right.
why my pricing strategy is working with the people I want to work with. So yes, I'm not going to be number 1 in the world, but because I can't do everything everybody wants. So for us, it's as important to take care of our clients or
Yes.
have that relationship with us as it is to have it with our vendors.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So we take much importance in those relationships both ways.
And you're right. You're absolutely correct to be on a standby, because from the business perspective, why would you invest in something that doesn't apply to your business? If your business is not it's not requiring right now for you to, take a look at, other things like the new technologies that are out there, MT, large language models, etc. Why would you even do it? Unless there is a customer willing to pay for that, it would be a wasted investment. Unless there's a return on investment from your side. If I implement this technology, I save X and it provide me with a little bit more profit, maybe. But you're right, because of the business model that you're in, you probably educated, you're being educated on the technology. You're waiting to see how the technology is going to affect the business. And to be honest with you, that's the right approach, because I see a lot of people jumping into it 2 feet first, and then they come back and they say, well, didn't work that well.
We can't spend. I mean, we're smart about spending our money. So, and the reality is that you need to have a team working on that, understanding what's really happening. I mean, we are a smaller company that wears still the partners. We wear many hats. I mean,
correct. You're an entrepreneur. I mean, you do everything you need to do. I mean, that's what an entrepreneur does.
Exactly. And even though I'm in charge of revenue generation, I also volunteer with Women in Localization, and I do this and I do that. And it's a different front. So I listen. Correct. I participate actively in many conversations, panels, presentations. I listen. I learn all the time. So I'm listening to podcasts all the time to see what people say, what people are doing. And then I go to the office like crazy. And then my partners are like, okay, wait a minute.
Chill out.
Let's breathe.
Chill out.
Let's breathe and think about this for a second. So yeah, that's the thing about having partners, right?
I noticed
they help you stabilize.
That's right. I mean, you gotta be grounded sometimes, and sometimes some people like your friends or your partners will tell you, hey, you're way off there, man. Just come back to reality a little bit.
Exactly.
And the same thing happens to all of us. But one of your interesting side of your business life is the volunteering aspect, which impressed me quite a bit, because you're involved in, and that's your nature of giving back to the industry. And that's the purpose of this channel, by the way, is to give back to the industry. I don't need another job. I already have a full-time job, and I'm president of the Canadian Language Industry Association at the same time. So I don't really need another task to be added here, but I felt the need personally. I felt the need, and it sort of came upon me one day. I felt the need that I need to give back to the industry and document some of these conversations with notable people such as yourself. And hopefully the records down the road will be valuable to somebody. And I know, like right now, we have, we're just launching the channel, and we're having so far very good. We publish these episodes on a weekly basis, sometimes twice a week, and we're booked till the end of summer. So it is nice. There's a lot of activity happening on this podcast. So again, given your nature of giving back to the industry, which is similar to mine, talk to me a little bit about the various associations, not just one, the various associations that you're involved in.
The various associations. Well, as I explained earlier, ever since I started, for me, it's been important to share what I know.
That's right.
And I feel people are so lucky these days, people studying translation or starting out in the translation business, because they have so much more information and so many opportunities I wish I had when I started out. So going to the US to that ATA conference back in the year 2000 and not coming back to Argentina and sharing, it was like, why would I do that? The more we grow as an industry, the better we all become, the more knowledge there is out there. And then the funny thing is that when I organized the first conference, people were saying, oh, that's so generous of you to share. And I'm like, why would I keep this information to myself? I mean,
right.
Why aren't we using technology at the university? Trados was already there. And our university, we were still translating with dictionaries. Like, I'm like, ATA was at the time also using dictionaries for their, exams and stuff. So I always felt like a huge need to share. And at one point it was funny because we have the board of translators here in Córdoba, the Colegio de Traductores, where you legalize. We are official translators, right? We're certified translators.
Certified translators. We have the same thing in Canada, yeah.
Okay, so they are a body, an organism that can legalize, and they act on your behalf, and they, sign and seal documents and stuff. And it was funny because at one point it was my office receiving all the calls from all the fellow translators asking, how do I legalize this? How do I do that? How do I? And I'm like, the board is, a different number. At one point, we became the people to go to for information because we were sharing so much. And I guess it's always been in my, nature. And because this is so isolated, Argentina is so in the end of the world. And it was always, I felt ever since I went to that conference that we were in such isolation that the only way for me to know what was going on in the world was to go to the different associations and become actively involved. Because being a passive participant of these associations, you can get so much. But being actively involved, you get to learn. You get to connect to people on very different levels.
Yes.
You get to know people that you wouldn't know from attending a conference in a coffee break. So you need help organizing an event? I volunteer. You
Absolutely.
need, so the Association of Language Companies, I'm organizing events. I've been chair, co-chair, conference, gala. With Fabiano Cid from C-Cups today he's OXO. His company was purchased by OXO. Yeah. We started a brand called Think Latin America when Latin America was on the cover of the Time magazine, right? So we organized, it was Mexico, Chile, Dublin. I mean, so many events about Think Latin America. It was events about how to do business with Latin America. And the speakers were usually corporate side. It was super interesting. And then Gala acquired the brand and they started doing this Think series and stuff like that. So it's always been like that. And for me, it's been a huge learning experience. And I always encourage people who want to get more out of what they do. And especially because of our background, I'm a linguist. So seeing people, imagine being the president of Women in Localization. I've been the first Latin American president in Latin America.
Congratulations.
Never seen before. Vendor side, never seen before. So I had the opportunity to represent this organization for 2 years. I worked very hard, but I also learned how to, just seeing these Silicon Valley ladies, right, in a meeting room, how they behave, how they talk, how they communicate, how they prepare, how they present. For me, it was huge. It was like going to, Stanford. I don't know. I didn't need Stanford. I had Women in Localization.
That's right. Right?
So it all depends on how you get involved, how much you engage, and how much you want to learn.
Correct.
And many people say, what's in it for me? And I start what can you do for the association? And everything else is going to come back to you.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. It's a boomerang effect,
So
right? So
it's always with everything, it's a boomerang effect.
That's right. That's
So,
right. That's right.
and I'm a true believer of that.
You put it out there in good faith, it'll come back to you. So, and you know, a lot of people that they negotiate what's in it for me at the front, they don't get nothing at the end, I think sometimes. But
Agree.
you have to be generous
Agree.
in your time and your feeling towards something and your passion towards something in order for us to harvest something out of it. It's there's many philosophers that spoke about this throughout the time, but you know, I really appreciate what you've shared with me today, Cecilia. And one of the you know, I'm bringing back. We have an episode planned with Carrie Fisher again. We've done one episode with Carrie, and she's coming back onto the channel. We have another one booked, and we're going to dive into a specific topic on this one. I won't spill the beans now, but there is I'm a big supporter of this channel is a big supporter as well of women in localization, empowering women in our industry, driving and I'm hoping someday at some point somebody will take my seat in this channel, and hoping there will be a female to take that to the next level.
Nice.
At this point, yeah, that's right. And I would love that. At this point is just driving this forward by having those kind of conversations together and driving this to the next level. So before we wrap up here, is there anything you would like to say for the audience as a takeaway or a couple of wisdoms that you can share with us?
Sure. Going back to, well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I think this space is beautiful and very necessary. And I encourage anyone and everyone to listen to these different conversations happening online, because they are, there's always something to take away, always. I'm usually a podcast listener in the car. And I don't listen to music. I listen to podcasts, and it's always sparkling things in my head. So it's very important. Going back to wrap up our topic, I think that revenue generation from our perspective, Latin ways, is an ongoing process. There's no, if I didn't give like 3 big tips of revenue generation, is because I don't think there's just 3 big tips. I think it's an ongoing process. It's always changing. It has to do with relationships, for me, key, and also constant analysis of who your client is, or who you want your client to be, which is, you know, your strategy might change based on that, and who you are and what you want to be as a company. So if you're looking, and this is in this social media world that is crazy and it's putting so much pressure on everybody, I think it's always important to refrain from that a little bit and think about who you want to be. We had a huge strategy session this year with my partners at the beginning of the year, and we said, do we want to be like number 1 in Latin America and go crazy? Or do we want to, you know, keep like this, be like this, choose who we want to work with, be sort of a lifestyle business while we make money? Well, okay. So it's important to understand who you are and who you want to be. And I would repeat that or make that as valid for personal life for everyone, especially in these days where people are being so pressured by images and by, you know, ideal lifestyles, ideal. What you see is not necessarily
what it is.
So don't go crazy. Choose what makes you happy. Make as much money as you want, or as you can, but the level of success of your company is what you want it to be and not what other people think. So it is important to have a good reputation, but reputation for me is not necessarily being the top number one company because of how much money I make. My reputation is, or Latam Waste reputation is different, is having been able to be in the business for 20 plus years, having the same clients for 20 plus years, and being able, or being, here with you,
That's right.
having this conversation. You consider me a person to talk to.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I would like to leave our podcast with that kind of message more than
really,
anything else.
I really appreciate that, and it's quite true. Not necessarily for businesses to, make as much money as they can. Everybody in business to make money. That's right, and the images that you mentioned, the reference to the images as well, like. The images that other portray on us are much different than the images we envision ourselves in. And as we live, as you mentioned earlier, as we live in a very influenced world, I don't open Instagram one time and I'm not a big Instagram user, but, because of this channel now, we're putting a lot of our stuff on Instagram. So I have to use Instagram, and I'm being presented with things like, I don't know where they come from. And I'm thinking who are these people? Who are these people? And why would you put that on Instagram? So, there's a lot to be said about being grounded on every level, as you mentioned earlier, on a personal level and on a business level. At the end of this, I want to thank you so much, Cecilia, for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. You're so gracious with your time today with me. And I hope that you would consider, coming back to this channel. Always good to check with you and always good to talk to you. Yeah. You're right. You are a reference in our industry, and I consider you a very good reference in our industry. I have a lot of respect for you personally. I've talked to you a couple times over the years. I hope that this is the beginning of our conversations to come. And thank you so much.
Anytime. I'm always available. Well, not always, but we can always arrange it.
We can arrange it. So thanks again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, thank you for listening to this podcast. I really appreciate your time. Always welcome your ideas. Always welcome your engagement with us. If you have any comments, you have any suggestions, or you have any questions, please look us up on YouTube or your favorite podcast channel. We exist on all podcast channels that exist out there. So thanks again, and we look forward to our next episode. Thank you so much.